An identity crisis can be many things. Losing your sense of purpose, a midlife crisis, returning to civilian life, or simply feeling like you don't belong. My life has been one ongoing identity crisis after another. I've started this podcast to help deal with my own demons and negative self-talk, and to ultimately and hopefully learn that I'm not alone, and that these thoughts and feelings aren't unique to me. So if this helps you too, then one by one we can come together, heal ourselves, and move forward with our goals and dreams with a sense of belief, happiness, and purpose. Hi, welcome back to the Identity Crisis Podcast. I'm your host, JNewtz, and I have with me today Dave Lowe's. Now, are you related to Rob Lowe, the Hollywood star, which is an ex-porn star, or are we on a different wavelength here?
I mean, I may look like a porn star sometimes, but no, definitely not, bro.
Well, I can't deny you do have the wild porn look.
That's if I shave off the beard and leave the mustache, I can go the 70s style.
Oh, bringing that style back. Well, look, there's a lot of women who are, bringing back the muff. So, hey, you could bring back the 70s man bun or whatever it is. So, anything is possible. So, there you go. If life doesn't work out for you, there's a new identity straight away.
Oh, that's the crisis. That's the midlife crisis.
Yeah. Do I get into porn or do I just keep doing the music? Mind you, you could argue that being a musician is almost like being a porn star anyway, because there is that cliche that guitarists and musicians do get a lot of sex, they get a lot of chicks. So is that true or is that a myth?
Oh, dude, that's like the biggest myth that there is. That's it's kind of like when people are making money. It's like the same thing. It's the biggest myth that's out there. I think it's just portrayed by guitarists to make themselves feel better.
The guitarist identity crisis. Oh yeah, we get laid all the time. That's why we all look so mean when we shred. It's not because we're concentrating on the music. It's just we've got blue balls and we're going.
It's so funny, guys. It's made for guys to play to other guys to impress other guys because they're the ones that actually give a shit about the guitar skills. And it's the uber masculine playing out to uber masculine guys to try and out masculine each other. It's it's pretty funny.
Well, congratulations. Within less than 2 minutes of this show, you have already made guitar playing homosexual. Thank you, Dave. It's been great to have you on the show.
No worries. It's been a great time to be here, and I'll hopefully catch you next time.
Oh dear! No, look, you've touched a chord with me, no pun intended, because I am a guitarist myself. But now I am questioning my sexuality. So thank you.
That's okay, man. That's what it's about, asking the questions and hopefully finding answers. But if the answers don't fit, then you can ask more questions.
Yeah, well, if you don't ask, you don't get, do you?
That's it, man. That's it.
So tell me, you are obviously a guitarist. We've established that. What got you into music? Has it always been an underlying passion of yours, or was it just an interest that you found in school? How did you get into it?
Yeah, man. I've played pretty much for as long as I can remember. I actually remember the first day that I decided I was going to play guitar lessons, and it's a funny story. It was just we're in the line for at school at the canteen, and there's a kid there who's playing just practicing air guitar, and he's doing his thing, and I'm asking him what are you doing, and he's like, oh, I'm just practicing for my lesson because they used to do guitar lessons at school, and I would have been in grade 4 at the time, and I said, oh, lessons, eh? And I was like, it just tweaked me, and I asked him a bunch of questions, and then went home, and I just remember begging mum to go and get the lessons because I had an acoustic guitar at home that my uncle had given me, and always just playing around, and I was like, all right, this is something that I want to do. And it was kind of, I was probably the most sure I've been about anything in my whole life was at that point in time, man, when I was just like, that's what I want to fucking do, and I want to play guitar and I want to learn. So it was a step up from me cutting out ice cream buckets and making guitar picks for my ukulele at home,
That's awesome, man. I love the fact that you had to go home and ask your mum or almost beg your mum, can I please take lessons? Whereas my parents, I said to them, I don't want to play sport. They said, well, you have to do something. So it's either sport or music. Okay, I'll do music. Right, well, drums or guitar? I'm like, drums?
Like, flute.
So I got forced into shit, whereas you had to beg for it. But hey, we're all different. So so tell me, like, getting into playing guitar, how did that feel for you? Like, when obviously when you start lessons, it takes a little while to wrap your fingers around the neck of the guitar and work out where the chords are and other bits and pieces. Then that can be frustrating as you're learning. But once you get the hang of that, how did playing feel to you?
Man, that's that's really weird. It's kind of like it's an extension of yourself in a way that's hard to explain. It's kind of like you just go into this space that you kind of leave yourself, and it's like it's almost like being. It's what people talk about flow state and stuff, and it's very much in that zone. But it's kind of almost with music when you're playing and you get lost. It's like you're so in the moment, but you're so far detached from the moment because you're that into what you're doing. It's kind of this really weird juxtaposition of like I'm really there, but I'm really focused, but I'm also just kind of on autopilot, and in another, your brain switches off and you get a chance to almost like relax and just go into this space where you're not in control. It's this weird way to explain it, but it's, yeah, you almost lose control by having control, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that it's easier to lose control when you're playing in a group situation, whether it be just another player or an entire band, or do you find that you can do it just playing by yourself on the guitar? Like, is there a difference at all?
I find it gets enhanced when you're like when I'm playing in a band situation, especially the most that happens is when you're in the creative moment. So like when there's stuff, when you're just jamming and it's no, you come up with a riff and an idea and then everyone just joins in. That's when it's like really, really enhanced. So you kind of just, you're listening, but you're kind of going off and you're just bouncing off each other in this way that you can't focus, because as soon as you focus too much on what you're doing, you lose that creative bounce. And like you can get it by yourself, but it's, if I'm playing by myself and I'm writing a song, getting ideas, like if I'm working on stuff for the new album or whatever, or just pick up the guitar and just start having a jam, it's cool. You kind of lose time and you get in that space. But when you add people to it, it's kind of like every time you add an extra person, there's another layer that gets added where it kind of expands it even further, I guess. Like, it's the best way I can say it.
Yeah, I was just, yeah. I mean, I was in a band years ago myself, and just listening to what you said there, it reminded me of that particular time, because I remember we used to have this sort of silly warm up session that we used to do just to kind of get into the groove after Phil had spent 45 minutes setting up his drums. We'd go in there and just plug and play, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm not ready yet, guys." Like, fucking drummers. But we'd always just do this little jam song. It was just a simple, G, C, D chord progression. And we just start talking through it. And we used to call it brush your teeth. And I'd start off by saying something, and then I go, and do you know what I did then? Brush your fucking teeth. And then we just go into this silly little, let's call it chorus. And then and then Steve, the bass player, would start talking, and then, go back into brush your teeth. And then, Phil would do his thing, and half the time we just cut him off, but just go back to the chorus. But it used to get us into such as wonderful, just, as you say, flow state. But I remember trying to replicate that at home by myself could sometimes be hard, because I think if you're working on a song or trying to work out a riff or a lyric or whatever it is, sometimes if you're too much in your head, and I think this is the same thing with anyone who's in a creative field, whether it be, writing, music, comedy, as I do these days, sometimes you can be so in your mind that you go, fuck it, this isn't working for me, or whatever the case may be. And it can be harder to work solo than it can in a group. Do you find that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the blocks come when you're trying to force as well. Like, so when you're by yourself, you might go, like you might find it for yourself, like say if you go, I'm going to set aside some time to write, and you go, I've got a few hours here, and then you feel like you need to get an outcome, and that's when I find you can't hit that state when you're trying to get an outcome. And it's usually when you're just organically trying, just playing for the playing sake, or just doing the thing that you love for doing, just for doing it. Is when you can kind of escape more, and then you also come up with better ideas and better stuff that's free flowing from a place that, I don't know, it's like, for people that aren't creative, it's hard to explain, but it's almost like you tap into something that's not you. It's like you're channeling something else through you, and you're not even like in control, but it's all coming from you, if that makes sense. Like, it's probably this weird way to explain it. But
no, look, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I think that the best example I can think of off the top of my head is Yesterday by Paul McCartney, how he literally dreamed it. And then when he was writing, for example, Let It Be, like, once again, like, he had a dream of his mum, whose name was Mary, and she just said, let it be, Paul, let it be. And he took inspiration from that dream in his flow state. And that's why you've got the words in the song, Mother Mary comes to me, let it be. So You, as you say, you're drawing from, like, let's call it, the ether, or the sort of you're tapping into something that's not you, but it flows through you.
Yeah, and I think the more that you give up the control, the more creative you become. And that's a really difficult balance to find when if you've got an outcome that you're trying to do. So say, for instance, for us, like, when we're working as a band, we've got, you're working on an album, you've got a bunch of songs that you're trying to complete. And it's, the more you try to force it, it's almost like trying to get the triangle block, and you're trying to hit the hammer and smash it into the square, and you're trying to make things fit. But the more you give up that control, and the more you step back, the more creative you become, and the more interesting the ideas become. And it's a really weird kind of way to, I don't know, I can't even explain how it works, but it's like the more control you give up, the better the outcome in the end, like, because you get that, we call it the inspirato, and when we're talking about it, it's like, oh, you got to get that inspirato riff, and then you do the like tweaks and stuff later. But there's something about when you're in that moment that just, it's kind of like your true full self, because you're not in the driver's seat. You're almost letting your subconscious drive you while you're there, and you're noticing it and you're doing it, but it's not fully in control. I don't know. That's kind of the best way I can explain it.
I guess that's why, for signed bands especially, like the first album and sometimes the second album can be some of their perceived best work, because there's been no pressure from the record label to go, right, you need to do another album, and you've got a year to do it. They've spent 5 or 10 or however many years writing their songs, developing their style and getting their presence. And by the time they record that first album, they know their shit backwards, and they've had all the time in the world to do it. But then the second one's like, all right, boys, you've got 12 months, and then we're going on tour. And that flow state is then compromised because you've got a deadline.
And I think part of it too is people start double guessing. So I know, especially like I play metal. Like, I've been in metal my whole life. Like, that's kind of what spoke to me. And I know from the point of view of, like, with a lot of bands, I'm talking to a lot of people when we're playing with other bands and different people around. When I was in music media for years too, and speaking to some high profile people, a lot of the problem that people find is that expectations that are put on you from the outside, and those external, you let the external drive what you do, because you're worrying about what people are going to perceive it as. And that's where instead of trying to go full from the inspiration, you're trying to squeeze into what you think people expect of you.
Mm.
So, and I think that's a really difficult, that's where you get the first 2 albums, then you get to the next one, and it can get difficult because that is the identity of yourself is mixed up between what you were, what you're becoming, where you're going, and it's difficult. People can find it pretty difficult.
It sounds sort of counterproductive in some ways, doesn't it? Because as you say, you're trying to work out, well, what do people expect of us? Whereas at the same time, fans or people who have become fans have latched onto you because they love what you've done. And then there's that danger, I suppose, of going so far to the other side where people go, what the fuck was that? And they can lose interest in you.
Metallica. No. So I was, no, that was the only moment.
Did we just hit a sore spot there, did we?
No, the only moment I had with that was I think they had an identity crisis with the when it came to the Load era of, I think they lost it. They didn't even know who they were anymore. But that was, I agree. That was,
it could be worse. They could have been Nickelback.
Yeah, but at least Nickelback knew who they were from the start. They're just like, we're just going to be this, we're going to be shit, and we're going to be really popularly shit because we're going to write songs that can't get out of your head, and we don't give a fuck, and we're not like...
Yeah, we're going to be the band that everybody hates, but they love to hate us.
But there's so many people that love them. I remember we got invited to, years ago, I think it was the 20th anniversary, or it might have been 25th anniversary for Roadrunner Records, and they had... we had an industry party, and when we went there, and you go in and it's all like drinks and everything are on the house, and they're like all the compares every time, and just going, and thanks to Nickelback, it's been their shout tonight. And the whole ongoing joke was like, when the food come out, it was going, and the food's on Nickelback, and basically saying that they paid for Roadrunner to be able to sign everybody else that they wanted to sign. Which, yeah, that was a pretty interesting... they kept Roadrunner Records afloat for all of their popular, catchy earworms.
Okay, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, look, I will be honest with you. You are right. They do have some catchy songs. There's a whole bunch of stuff of theirs that I don't know, but there's probably at least 4 or 5 that I could rattle off the top of my head that I know them, and you can't deny they're a bit catchy.
Oh, it's just one of those things. You don't want to pretend that you like it, but it gets stuck in your head, and then you're like, find yourself humming it, and you're like, oh crap.
Do you think that Nickelback is a band that kind of also have a formula to their songs? I mean, obviously, like, there's punk, pop punk, and for lack of a better word, let's just sort of say like pop metal. As such, I think there's a few genres that can kind of squeeze into each other. As such, do you think that Nickelback is very formulated in the way that they write, or do you think that they are just like, oh, let's just do this time and that next time?
I reckon they've got a bit of both. I always, years ago, I got forced, well, not forced, I got more challenged by someone to go and have a listen to stuff outside the singles of their stuff, and I was like pretty surprised with how heavy some of the stuff actually got that wasn't the singles. And I reckon a lot of what it is going, okay, we give you these, a couple of formula songs for the album that are super catchy, and we just follow that. It's almost like the pop, you're putting together like the pop recipe of like the writing it like specifically like a pop song, and then they get to do what they want outside of that. And I think that's probably what they've lent into, is going, okay, cool, we can play to, all these people, and we get to do our creative stuff as well.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing is, unless you're actually a part of the band or a part of, the management around the band, you never really know.
Oh, no. And there's for sure moments where they would just be told, hey, like, there's so many people that are actually like, ticket holders to the band, where they've got vested interest in them continuing on making super-sized singles and whatever else. And that's kind of, at that point, it becomes a business more than a creative outlet.
Isn't it funny how we always start our creative journeys wanting to express ourselves in certain ways, but then when you get into that business realm and that professional realm, and it's the same thing with politics as well, your intentions always start off so pure about what you want to do, but then when you get into the machine as such, people are like, well, now you have to do this, we want you to do this. And there's a wonderful video clip by Sum 41 for their song Still Waiting, and they open it up with this wonderful parody where they walk into the producer's room and he's like, hey, do you smoke? You do now. And he throws all these cigarette packets and name change. The Sum 41, it's all out. We're going to go with The sums, you like it? The sums. And it's just this like 1 minute parody thing, but it really sort of personifies how management would probably, go, right, now you're going to do this, monkey boy.
Oh, and it happens a lot. Like even being when I was working in music media, you can see that side of the business happening with like just even the promoters and the way that things get pushed for specific artists differently to others, and it's definitely a good parody, but also like almost like a dig at the actual reality of the situation.
Yeah, of course. So tell me, like, music is obviously very self-expressive. Whether you're a singer, songwriter, guitarist, I mean, music in general, it's always been a very creative and expressive outlet. How do you feel? And to use my phrase, how does your identity feel when somebody else is saying to you, "Well, we want this now, and you must do this now"? How does that make you feel as far as your self-expression?
Let me just put it into. I can give you a really good context from my life of how I felt with doing stuff like that. So when I first went to uni, I was trying to get together. I'd moved from the country to Melbourne, and trying to get band together. I'd always done bands all through high school and stuff, and then trying to get stuff together. I had heaps of songs. We had all this, like me and the drummer. He was living in Ballarat at the time, so only an hour a bit away, and we were like, let's just continue. We'll find some people to play with. And in the meantime, while I lived on college at uni, and I was like, we got these events and they need band. And so I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to be at the events. I might as well get paid to be there. So we're doing these cover bands, and it was really this odd situation where when we go off to a different, say we'll go off campus and we're out, and somebody would introduce you as somebody from that cover band, and it just fucking didn't sit right, man. Like I just couldn't. I just, even being on stage, having to sing and play songs that I didn't really like, just fucking didn't feel right. It felt like you're wearing like a suit of lies, like just this horrible feeling of pretending to like shit that you don't and trying to be this happy about it. And it was very, it was a difficult situation. So yeah, that would kind of, hopefully that'll explain how I feel about that.
Yeah, and actually the thing is, I'm not too sure if you realize this or not, but that you just said it's like wearing a suit of lies. And that, I think, that's such a wonderful, powerful image, especially in my mind, because it really basically says, I don't care what you want, and I don't care what your name is or what your style is or anything like that. This is what you're going to do. This is what I want from you. Put this on and be this. And yeah, I mean, that's a really powerful way of putting it across.
Yeah, and they would have like a list. So say a venue would have a list of songs. It was almost like an approved song list for where you were playing, and you had to play like 80% of that list. And
wow! So you must do Jesse's Girl, and you have to do K-San. You can't skip that because it's a crowd pleaser. It's a crowd pleaser. Oh, and better as well. These are the three. You cannot do that. If you don't do that, you're not coming back.
Pretty much, all of those were definitely on the list. So.
Of course they were.
But yeah, it was a really that was a big struggle with like identity. So one part of me, I'm trying to put together what I want to do, and yet getting known for being something that I fucking hated doing, but I was doing it because of, we're getting paid and I'm at places that I was going to be, so I might as well have got paid instead of paying to be there.
And do you sort of just put that down to like cutting your teeth, even though it is sort of encroaching on your identity?
Oh, it was good. I learned, you learn a lot, and it was kind of more of a means to an end, I guess, was more the way that I looked at it. Was just, hey, I might as well, you know what you're like. You're broke at uni, and every dollar is important, and you're like, fuck, this way I get free beer, which I'm going to pay for beer. I'm going to pay for a ticket to be at this event, and I'm getting paid to be there, and I'm getting the free beer. So I'm actually walking out from the event that I was going to go to anyway, with money in my pocket and free beers. So that was kind of where I went with that, and that was, but definitely not cutting my teeth in the way that once playing in originals and going to the venues and doing the whole, play to 3 people in a room and shit. That's where you actually fully cutting your teeth, getting the training wheels on.
Oh, look, you're not wrong, and I've done the same thing. I have performed in front of 3 people before, and it is hard because you can't let the lack of audience stop you from giving a great performance.
And the best bit of advice I ever got given was just remember that one of those people that might be the best night of their life, and you might be the band that, the performer that changes their life. And it's like they might have come to see you guys. They don't give a fuck that there's 3 people there. And so it's like play like the room's full at all times, and make sure you're not ripping off the people that are there, because no matter how many people are there, they paid to be there, and you got to give them the value that they want.
Yeah, and they all know there's only 3 of them. It's not like they have to go, oh, why were they so lousy tonight? They know that there are only a few people in the room.
Yeah, and I think that's probably like, if you can put on the show how you put on the show to hundreds of people when there's only a few people, that's when, that's kind of really, really getting you prepared for when you're playing the bigger shows and you're doing these things, because it's every single interaction you're having with fans, you're putting everything you've got into it. And it's like, you're just giving everything you've got, and there's nothing, you're not holding anything back. And once I learned that and just really, really embodied that, that was what kind of changed the trajectory for where we went as a group as well, because people talk, and then you get, all it took for us was one show. We did that, and it was a small show, and the person happened to be in the room that really loved it and called somebody else who was a big promoter, and was just saying, you got to fucking book these guys for this festival that they do every year. And that kind of opened the doors for us to do way, way bigger things from just having that attitude.
You never know when the right opportunity is, and it could be now, so don't screw it up. Like always,
pretty much.
Always basically, as we just said, play to the audience as if it's a huge audience. Never compromise on your performance.
That's it, man. And it's kind of, then you're always ready. It's kind of that be ready so you don't have to get ready.
But look, I know what you're talking about there. I've seen bands who have done the same thing. I've actually been at a pub where there was more members in the band than there was in the audience, but they put on such an amazing show that night, and now they're huge. I mean, they're a 1960s cover band, so they don't obviously do their own originals, but they are now doing venues where there are hundreds of people rather than a few dozen. And it all comes from, as you say, cutting your teeth. And I've been following that group ever since, because they just gave such a great performance. They still connected with us, even though there was an empty pub. There was one person behind the bar, 3 people in the audience, and 5 members of the band. But, they have gone on to bigger and better things that strengthen them as musicians, strengthen them as performers. And as I said, I still follow them whenever I'm back in Melbourne. I always go off to their gigs and see them, and they're just wonderful. So,
and no doubt they would remember you when you come up and say good day as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've always had a really good connection that way as well, which has been fantastic. And you'll understand this, obviously, because as you've built up your music career and your fans, there are people that you go, well, you've been with us practically from the start, and you're what you would classify as, a diehard fan, or a fan for life as such. And you've gone through that journey together. Like, you've seen the band grow and evolve, and they've seen you support them through that process.
And even like to continue on from that with the identity, there's people that I know from early days, and they've been coming to shows, and they'll come to, 90% of the shows if you're playing in that city and you see them, and they get to grow along with you too. Like, there would have been times in the early days, especially when you're not self-assured, and bringing it back into your, like, the identity part is like, when I first start, your identity is like, okay, so what's rock and roll? metal. Okay, I've got to get hell drunk and act like a lunatic and party like crazy. And there would have been people that's all they know me from early days is like just fucking getting shit faced and then getting up and talking absolute horseshit. I watch videos of like myself on stage in between songs, just ranting like a fucking lunatic. But you know, probably it was at the time that was who I hid behind was that alcohol and that kind of thing. And the people in the audience are going, yeah, that have met you like that, and then they get to watch me grow now. Where through years, I don't even drink when we play at all anymore. I get up and I went through a lot to get to that point where I wasn't hiding my identity behind drinking and this uber bravado type thing. And then there's still the same people come, and then you're having conversations with them, like even at the merch desk every time. And it's really interesting to watch them like grow together. It's a really interesting, I don't know the best way to say it. It's kind of, they see you grow up as well as you're watching them become different people. And it's a really cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of my favorite bands is Green Day. And I mean, look, we all know that Billy Joe has been, on and off, certain drugs all of his life. And then years ago, I was at that iHeartRadio gig. He had that absolute meltdown on stage where he smashed his guitar and he said, "One fucking minute, I'm not Justin Bieber." And everyone's like, whoa. But then they bounce back, and I think when you like what somebody does, and you've been with them through the long haul, and you love their music. And the thing with music, I think, with compared to a lot of other things in life, music is you can get an instant feeling from it within seconds of hearing the music or hearing certain lyrics. And for that reason, people I think are a lot more connected and invested with music and musicians. So when someone goes off the rails, as I said before, like Billy Joe Armstrong, you go, well, I love the messages in your music, and I love what you're putting out into the world, and I resonate so much. And so you're having a meltdown. Hey, take your time, man. Whereas somebody who's not a fan of the band and doesn't know the song will be like, what the loser? What are you doing there? You're fucking killing your career because there's no understanding.
What's wrong with this bastard?
Everything. That's why he's a performer. We're all a bit fucked up.
But yeah, I'd say like probably the biggest thing, like when you're growing and you've got this, public persona to a point, like I'm not into anywhere near the level of that, but there's still a point where that happens. There's things that happen in your life that make you have to change and question what path you're going down, whether that's the right path. And with us, like in our band, we'd had a fair few things that obstacles come in the way. Like the reason that I had to change the way that I was like I got really sick in 2010. I went over. It actually happened of all things. I finally booked tickets to go to Wacken, which is like it's like heavy metal mecca, I guess. It's like kind of one of those things. If you're a metal fan, it's the place you've got to go. It's the 4-day festival to end all festivals, and finally bought tickets, got to go over, and I got really, really sick. I got diagnosed with POTS, which funnily enough at the time, nobody really knew what it was. But since COVID, when there's been heaps more cases of that since a lot of that stuff, and it's a lot more aware, but trying to deal with going from this invincible 27-year-old dude who's like frontman for this fucking band, and we're just, going full steam, can drink and party and go as hard as you like, to being like not knowing what the fuck's going on when I'm like trying to walk and I just can't see, and it feels like you're on a boat and you're like losing your balance and you're just getting dizzy and shit, and having to kind of give up a lot of things. Like I had to quit my job at the time. I remember trying to play shows when we first got back and going to headbang or play or sing, and I was blacking out in the middle of a song and having to reassess kind of who I was as a person and go, okay, this uber bravado of this front man who drinks and parties and whatever else, to go, okay, I'm not fucking invincible. And then that kind of led into me having to almost reinvent who I was. And that's when I stopped drinking for the most part. Like, I still will have a beer here and there now, but I don't drink to excess because I know that the consequences are too much and too great. And but learning how to interact with people that you've only ever interacted with drunk is a really, really, like, for lack of a better word, it's a sobering experience. Like, trying to find yourself in this sea of people where you've only ever interacted in that way, and then having to learn to act a different way. It's a really, I don't even know how to explain it, but that's kind of, it changes you, and it changes who you are and how you perceive things and how you value what you're actually doing and what it does for people as well.
Yeah, I suppose the audience is so used to seeing your onstage persona that when it changes suddenly and you are either more yourself or you're a persona that's recovering and trying to be that persona again. I can understand how that would be a very hard thing to go through. But from an audience point of view, they can also connect more with you because they see that different side of you, and the hardcore fans probably become even closer because they're seeing they're on the same journey with you because they're invested with you.
Yeah, and I found it's cool. I can have deeper connections because you remember everything that you've said, and that was one of the things when, especially younger, when you're just drinking, you say you're going to do all this shit, and then you don't remember because you're just so fucked up, and you never follow up with things you never remember, and people are like, "Oh, don't you remember?" And you're like, "Fuck if I know. Like, I can't fucking remember a thing." But then being able to, the next time you see somebody, once you've been sober and whatever, and you can go say to them, "Hey, blah blah blah. Last time you were talking about whatever," and then you see just the difference in how you can interact with people is, that was something else. So from once, after the initial trying to chase what you were, I guess it's like trying to find yourself again, and then once getting comfortable is another whole thing. And it was, I think, just through doing it and repetition and just practicing going out. Like, it took ages to be able to go into a sea of drunks and act like, not feel like you're missing out, but then actually being able to hang out and have a laugh and all that again was like, it was huge. And then you get to talk to people, and then they appreciate you more because I'm sitting there every single time. I'm not worrying about partying and being out doing things. I'm just more there to interact with the people who've come to see us and spend as much time as I can with all of those people as they come and go from, like, the merch at the end or whatever else. And you probably would have had a similar experience when you're sitting there talking to the people that come and see you after the show and everything as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And depending on the show that they've seen, they walk away with a different feeling or a different perspective of you, depending on what you presented, what you've spoken about, or how you've touched them, or sometimes how they just didn't connect at all.
Yeah. And sometimes they just like that show with shit.
Yeah, it's always nice. Yeah, it was good. Not your best work, but it was good. And you go, oh, fuck.
That's not the best time I've seen you. That's the words that you don't want to hear. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, last year's show, that was amazing. This year's show, yeah, it was good. Yeah, good to be here. Go, right.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. See you in 12 months. It's like, oh, thank you, buddy. But, it also it grounds you as well. And I think the thing is, as performers, we want to always get better, but I think that every now and again the ego does take over, and you think every now and again that you could be better than what you probably are. And I don't mean as in you're striving to be better, like you've got a false sense of how good you are, and you need a bad gig or an average gig to basically go, I needed that kick in the guts just to bring me back down to earth for a minute, because I'm not a rock star. I'm not the world's biggest comedian. I've still got room to grow and improve.
Wait, you're riding high on a string of really good shows and good feedback, and then you start to drink your own bathwater, and that's when you need something happens, and you have a really shit off night because you get complacent and you're like, oh fuck, actually need to put in the hard work every single night.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Tell me, having gone through POTS and everything, and going through, giving up alcohol and everything else, and all your experiences, have you found that has?
I wouldn't say give up, but mostly, for the most part, I'm not completely teetotaler, but I very rarely will. I pick and choose. Like, if I'm going to sit down, I'll make it a specific time where I'm going to sit down and have a beer with somebody that I haven't seen and have a really good chat and that kind of thing.
So,
but,
so you're moderating your alcohol intake.
Yeah, like, I mean, from last year, I could probably count on both hands my hands and toes how many drinks I had for the whole year. So,
Well, do you find that this experience has actually changed the way that you write music and that you perform, or has it enhanced you, or has it changed the style?
I think over time I became a much better performer, especially vocally, because I can do stuff now that I couldn't do before, and I could, like, even when we went so on the European tour we did, it was towards the end of 2022. We basically, it was just going night in, night out, and I know the other guys that were drinking and stuff were wrecked, feeling like shit, having to get going, and it was kind of every night I'm just like, I could get through the end of the songs and I'm like, shit, I could go another, by the time we got 4 or 5 shows in, I'm like, I could go another whole set and be fine, and feeling almost like getting stronger and stronger every time, and being able to really, really appreciate the moment and what, it's coming back to that flow state thing, and you're getting in the flow and you can see the audience becoming in the flow with you, and it's like, okay, it's almost like that you're sharing that whole moment, and you can bring them up because you're not in your own ego, you're experiencing it from like a clearer place that's kind of I don't know how to explain it. It's like, instead of being, I'm the fucking best, I'm rocking out and you're watching me rock out, it's like I can see it from more of I'm giving this experience and we're sharing it, and being able to go look out and see who's enjoying it, and then going, okay, I can see people starting to come on board. How can I involve them more? And you're trying to involve the people and get more people involved and bring that energy higher.
It's basically it's like a gathering. You're creating a gathering. Yeah,
and learning to control like the room, like read it. So you got to read the room, read the people, and when you're drinking or you're under the influence of it, things all of your focus turns inward, and you're more focused on yourself. And then when you felt that, you're going outward, and you can actually read other people more, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely.
And that's I reckon sorry, go ahead.
If you're under the influence of anything like drugs or alcohol, it can be very difficult to become aware of things, like aware of the situation, aware of people's responses. I've seen performers in different genres where you look at them and you go, you've got no idea that you just fucked yourself tonight. You've got no idea at all. And you can just tell from the audience have all pulled back, and the person on stage or the group on stage have got no idea.
Yeah, because you're just and you're like, fuck, best show ever.
Do you know what? There's a group of comedians in Melbourne. They're sort of like they're all up and coming as such. They're not household names, but they are known within the comedy circuit as the 20, and probably because that's how many of them there are. But they're known as the 20, and it was weird because they'd go to open mic nights about 3 or 4 times a night, every night. And I know that you can cut your teeth and so forth, but they would tell the same jokes, gig after gig after gig, to obviously sort of see how the audience would react. But the problem was that at most open mic nights, especially for comedians, your audience are comedians waiting to go on, or they have gone on and they're now just talking to their friends or other comedians, and you might get
And the wives and girlfriends.
yeah, that's right. Or you may get one or two punters who are there to see comedy, and then you got other people who are there for a drink who are like, "Oh, will you just shut the fuck up and come in here for a quiet drink?" But these group of comedians in the 20 would tell each other, "Oh, you were so good. That was so funny. I love that part." Yeah, the audience didn't laugh. They didn't get it. But what the fuck do they know? You were amazing. And I basically just say they used to just, it was basically comedian cocksucking, where you don't, you don't grow as a performer because, they were so invested in their group. They would support each other, which is great, but they would support each other blindly by telling them how good they were. It's like, no, the point is that joke probably isn't strong. So don't listen to your group friends in the 20. Listen to the audience. And I've seen comedians go on stage and they tell all these stories and it's getting no reactions. And you're thinking, why aren't you aware of the fact that the audience aren't invested in this? You should be. And sometimes people have gone, well, I've only got certain material planned. It's like, great, but if that's not working, read the room, change it, think of something. Or if you're only going on stage with 5 minutes prepared, the stuff that you haven't prepared, that you've written down, try to remember it, see what works. Reading the audience is the best thing you can do. And staying humble. There's nothing you can't grow as any sort of performer, whether you're a comedian, a musician, or anybody, if you don't respect the audience.
And I think that comes back to when there's yes people around. It's almost like having the more people go up and more people see opportunity to jump on board, they almost treat it like they're your mum and they're never going to tell you when shit. They're always going to give you positive encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah, look, the group that I was always a part of, we used to do that all the time. We were just very honest with each other to the point where we'd have Zoom calls or we'd get together and just go, right, we've just done this festival or we did the 2 shows this weekend of the festival. What do we think? And it was all about how to make the next shows better. That part's really working for you, but this punchline takes too long to be delivered, so you should shorten that section there. You're falling a bit flat with your performance here. Maybe try and say this way. But then when things were good, you go, that part there, you fucking nailed it. You need the highs and the lows. It's basically the compliment sandwich. It's like, dude, that joke was amazing. I mean, look, the other one that you told, it's like, that's not really working. I think it's actually kind of, you should consider cutting that. But the one that you ended on, oh my God, the audience loved it. You need to be honest, because if you're not honest, as you just said, you've got this false sense of, of security, or this false sense of where you are. You're not humble, and you could be going down the wrong path. You need people who are just prepared to tell it as it is, and the audience are typically those people, because if they love the music, they're invested. You can see it, you can feel it. If they love the comedy, you can hear it because they're fucking laughing. If they're not enjoying it, they're not with you, they're not dancing, they've got their backs to you, they're walking away.
And it's you can try and save it, but once it's lost, it's that moment of, fuck, I've lost this room.
Do you know what? I've seen that happen a few times. Once with a band where they played 4 or 5 minutes of songs that just the audience just didn't care about. And it took them the rest of the first set for the audience to warm back up again. And even I was like, these guys are shit. Like I believe that as a band, you should get on stage and your first song should grab the audience. And that's why as a comedian, I've always tried to walk on stage with music and energy to grab the audience. And then you tell a few quick jokes to get them laugh when you go, right, your energy's built up, we're laughing together, now let's get on with this. And if you don't do that, you can lose them. And it's, as you said, it's so hard to bring them back after you've lost them. And the one time that I saw was a really bad experience in comedy. I was doing an open mic night at a pub, and one of the comedians thought he'd tell a joke about rape, which number one wasn't funny. Now, I want to make this clear.
I was just laughing because you know that. You know how that's going to go.
Well, yeah, look, I want to make this clear. Like, there are comedians out there who have done very clever rape jokes, but they've been not disrespectful. They've been very clever, but they're also few and far between. Like, you should be able to joke about almost anything, but this person, he didn't deliver it in the most funny way. It was a horrible joke. It probably went on for far too long anyway. And during the break, I actually had this table come up to me and I said, look, just so you know, we're leaving because of that comedian. I know that they're not aware, but 3 out of the 5 women who are around this table have all been sexually abused in our lives, and we don't feel safe, and we're not coming back to this venue. And I'm like, whoa. But the entire room after that guy's performance, no matter who went up on stage, me or any other comedian, we struggled because the room was like, fuck me. Like, they were still thinking about the rape joke.
And you can't even go and save that with a joke about a shitty rape joke. Like,
no, you can't. And
you can try. But.
Yeah, it was just a horrible thing. But that comedian had no idea that he fucked up. He went on stage, he did his thing, didn't read the room, and he probably thought he had a great gig. Whereas other comedians were like, "Whoa, okay. Number one, don't tell rape jokes, and number two, if you do, make it funny. And if you can see the audience aren't going along with it, move on, get them back on side. Like you need to learn from shit, So
and give the trend.
Yeah. Anyway, all that stuff aside, because that is a bit of a heavy subject. Music, I know in my life, has been a huge way to deal with different emotions, whether it be sadness or depression or anger, for example. I think there's music that can really suit all emotions. What has been your lowest point in music for you that you've had to rely upon music for you at your lowest point?
I think it's, for me, because it's been such a constant, it's kind of like it comes back to what we're talking about at the very start, man. So, like, say if I've just had a fucking prick of a day and I'm just like, everything's going wrong, when you just get to that frazzled point where you just want to fucking scream fuck as loud as you can, and you just like, you could punch a fucking hole in the wall because shit's not going right.
Yeah.
I know for me, that's the time to pick up the guitar, play, and I can be, 20 minutes, half an hour later, and I'm like a fucking new person. It's almost like going and having a really good sleep and waking up feeling refreshed. It's because I can channel all of that, flows out. It comes out, and it's so no matter what happens, whether it's you're in a, if I need to get a pick me up, say like you've had a shit day and I've got to go play a show, I know I'll put on something like Turbo Negro because it's just fucking party, it's pump up, the lyrics are piss funny, it's so tongue in cheek that I can't possibly be in a bad mood. It's like the poncho sombrero combo. You can't not smile, and it's something that I don't know. Even with it resonates within you, like different music, different things can elicit different responses, and I will pick and choose to help me through different things. And it's always been something that I can escape into so far that you come out feeling fresh.
What's been your lowest point in your musical journey as far as this isn't working for me, or you've had self-doubt or imposter syndrome or anything? Has there been one specific dark time where you almost feel like you could just throw the whole thing in?
Oh, like, I think if you haven't had that, you probably haven't tried to push yourself far enough as a performer. But for me, probably one of the hardest times was when, like, actually getting sick and not being able to do what I wanted to do. Like, I wasn't physically able to perform, and I wasn't able to sing. I wasn't able to, like, as a front man, and I've got, the long hair, you're out there, I'm fucking used to headbanging and jumping around the stage and, just really owning that space. And when I couldn't even sing high notes without passing out and that kind of thing, that was probably the point where I wasn't sure if I should continue or I could, and having those doubts. And through in that time, like, I even I actually hurt my back through, it was kind of like a cascading event through with pots and everything like that. And I remember not even being able to put a guitar on. And when we got through we'd done all of the drums for our first album, and my best mate who was drumming with us at the time, he'd moved to Thailand, and we were like, fuck, we've been looking for someone for probably a good 18 months, and I was not in a good way. I was on painkillers and stuff for my back, and we decided we'll we'll finish the album. And I think the lowest point was going through, and we were tracking guitars, and I couldn't even remember the following, like the next session. Other guitarist turned up and I said, oh yeah, we're up to this. He goes, no, we fucking tracked that last time.
Oh, wow.
And I had no recollection because I was like in so much pain, and they put you on, like at that point in time, they didn't even have a pain relief. You know, you usually have a management plan to come, you know, get you through, then you get out. And there was it was just here, just have these. And that was kind of a pretty low point of going, okay, like we don't really have the band together. I'm not even sure if I'm able to continue doing what I want to do. But through all that, we just pushed through and ended up finishing the album, like tracked all the vocals and everything. And I remember listening back when we got the first mixes back, and it was kind of like that moment was hearing that and hearing it all come together was like, nah, I've got to fucking make this happen. This is like, you know, we'd worked so hard through all of this to do it. So let's make it happen. And that was kind of the argument. And that was the point where I went from the lowest to the highest, I guess, like once we got that back, and it was just like this moment of, you know, everything I've been through for the last few years is all fucking worth it.
Yeah, of course. During that low part of the journey, how was your mental health through that time?
Oh, dude, I was fucked. Like, I was in a pretty fucking bad way. Like, I was in a relationship that wasn't great for either of us, to be honest, at the time. And then, you know, even there was points in time where I couldn't even really wipe my ass properly because I was like, it was so painful. I was so like stiff when you have a lower back, like really, really bad. And then obviously with the POTS, and it actually makes situations like that worse. Like there's a lot of stuff to do with those that, knowing now, like as I've learned more about it, they combine, and there's a lot of things that I probably wasn't doing right because I didn't have the knowledge at the time to help myself. But it was, yeah, man, I was like in a state where, you know, day to day was just kind of like you wake up and you're existing. And that was, it's not a great state, great place to be when you're kind of just, you've got no focus because there's not much going on for you.
You're
and
in
you're
limbo
kind
mode,
of like,
basically, aren't you?
Yeah. And you just hit this rock bottom. And I think like the way out of it, it was funnily enough, like that relationship ended right at the time when the album was coming out. It was probably writing was on the wall for ages, but being able to go down to the fucking bottom of the pits of like, you know, you don't even, if you don't wake up, you don't care. Like it's a really fucking weird thing to say and to share with people because I don't really share it, but I got to the point where it's like, you know, if I don't fucking wake up tomorrow, it's probably not a bad thing. And
that's what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. And you get to that point, and then being able to, on the flip side of that, we've got this, like we get that mix back, and I'm just like, we're listening, and I'm just like, fuck, this is so fucking good. This is so cool. It's like, that was the path, and it was kind of that almost was the lifeline to pull me out. So all this bad shit's going on, like my life's falling apart, personal life, but I've got this thing that I've been working towards for, you know, we've got years into this first record through like a whole bunch of different things that have happened with like band stopping, starting, whether we're going to continue. And that just, it gave enough focus, and it came back to, you know, we booked some pretty cool shows off the back of, once we had that back in our hands, we had some really fucking cool shows, and that kind of got myself fit enough to be able to go and do these things. Like went and got better help, like got some advice, and actually started being able to get myself back on track physically, which helped mentally. And then the music was just like, fuck, I've got this purpose. This thing right now is all the purpose I need to move forward and keep continuing on this path. You know?
It's something that you and me, I've literally just discovered have got in common with each other, because we've gone through similar experiences. Last year, I was up in Edinburgh doing the festival there, and my back went because I slept on a really bad bed for the 2 weeks I was up there, and I came back home and my back spasmed, and I literally, I was in so much pain. I couldn't get off the floor. I called my girlfriend. I was in tears of pain. We had to get an ambulance out the next day. I couldn't get off the floor at all. I had to piss in a tub on the floor because I couldn't get up. And as you said, like every single day, like you're in pain. You can't walk. You can't sleep properly. You can't eat properly. Your mental state just goes so low. And with me, because being a comedian, I couldn't even think funny. You know, I couldn't. I was so focused on the pain and the rehabilitation and all the chiropractic appointments and trying to just maneuver myself through the day month after month after month. But my mental state only got better when I flew back to Australia to put on my Identity Crisis show, because I didn't do any comedy at all between Edinburgh in August last year and the shows in March, April this year, because I was going through that huge rehabilitation process. And to me, I was in that state where I was saying, well, I'm just going to give comedy up. But I at least said to myself, well, I'll do a solo show first, because if I'm going to give it up, I'd rather give up knowing I did a solo show rather than regretting never experiencing it. But going back to Melbourne, doing those 4 shows and having the response I got, not just from the material, but just connecting with people after the show because of the subject matter, it's given me, as you just said with your journey, it's given you that impetus, that heightened awareness, and you're going back upwards again, you know. And I mean, that's definitely been my lowest low.
Yeah, it's weird when you're in the middle of it. You can't see anything outside of what is in the immediate. So it's kind of like this, you're stuck in the right there, and you can't see a path out of it because it's so encompassing. Because even, you know, you sneeze and you just dread a sneeze because you know as soon as you sneeze, that's like, that's fucking almost the worst thing that can possibly happen. And it's like when you're at that point where, you know, you're struggling to go shower, like you have aids and stuff in your house and like whatever to get through, you can't see the path to like where you want to go. So it's almost like outside of the immediate doesn't exist, and you can't even envision a future because everything needs to be so focused on what's going on right at that point in time.
Yeah, it's horrible. But I think coming out of that and then getting back into your passion and rebuilding yourself as a performer and as an artist and as a player as well. And by the sounds of it, as you said, you know, you've booked, you know, gigs overseas and everything. You go through that low point, you can appreciate the high points now. And by the sounds of it, the career is going from strength to strength.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it goes into all of the things, man. Like there was, you know, you lose the job. Like I was, had a pretty decent job when all of that happened as well. Like doing all this, like doing a lot of different things, and you're trying to do that. And now it's like, I think when you get through something like that, it's never going to be 100% recovered, but you're in a management and you know how to deal with it, and you can read the signs. So before you end up in a bad way, you can read the signs and you know what you need to do. And it's kind of, it gives you this renewed sense of purpose. And, you know, that's led to me doing like my own business and everything as well, coming through all of that. You know, now being able to get to what was pretty much the end goal of, like, one of the top goals have been doing the music thing was to go, all right, we want to go and do a nightliner tour, being on the bus, going, and that's all we need to do for a month. And we got to go and do that. And that was kind of like, oh, fuck, man. Like I've accomplished what, if everything finished today in the music sense, I've done what, I've got to experience what something that I wasn't sure was ever going to happen. And that was a really fucking cool thing to happen to me. Like to go, fuck, I got there. I got to this point when I thought I would never even play at one point. To be able to get to there was fucking unreal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That it really is. And of course, once you get there, you can see that there's even further to go.
Oh, and there's never, as you know, when you get to, you're climbing up one mountain and you get to the top, and then you realize there's another mountain behind it, and you're like, fuck, I'm going to go climb that one, and then I'm going to go climb the next one, and I think that's what keeps the drive going, and that's where you keep reinventing that sense of self and the identity, because every time you get to that top of that hill, you've got that question of, who am I? Am I still that person that wanted to climb that hill? When I go to climb this next hill, who am I? Who do I want to become? And I guess that's kind of like what makes life to me, is that kind of, becoming a new person, and not necessarily a new person, but taking all of the good stuff from what you've learned on the journey up to this point, and then shedding the shit stuff that you don't want, and like de-shelling that, getting that, what was it? Getting rid of the suit of lies and fucking leaving that on that hill, and then trying to climb back up the next hill. And I think that's what really keeps me going, keeps me driven, and it makes me who I am. I guess is like that, adding more and more layers to knowing that, okay, things have been shit, and if you can get through that, you can fucking get anywhere.
Do you know, I think that you should call your next album Suit of Lies.
I'm probably going to write a song called Suit of Lies. I think that would be but I have actually got sort of stuff about, like, we have written things about identity and that kind of thing, but that one's a fucking great. I've actually written that down now, and I'll have to put a little credit to JNewtz in the
Oh, look, I mean, you credit yourself because, as I said, you said it before halfway through this interview, and I've written it down going, damn, that's such a good thing. And not just for me, but I think for anybody, if we can see anything that's negative, whether that be imposter syndrome or, anything with an identity crisis as a suit of lies as such, it's a nice playful term, and you can picture yourself, well, I'll just take this jacket off. And I'll take these pants off and I'll put something else on that I actually do want, and it's a very simple way of understanding it, and a visual way of understanding it, rather than close your eyes, you're on a cloud. It's more like, no, walk into the change room, take that fucking suit of lies off and come out with something else on. It's just easier. Do you know what I mean?
And it's something that you can change. It's an easy change. You can change your clothes. So yeah, it's like,
I've outgrown this suit. It fits me anymore. I've lost weight. It's too big for me. Fuck it off.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, you go through these identity shifts. And like, we talked about going through from, being this fucking rock and roll hero, trying to be a rock and roll hero. And that's all I wanted to fucking do at that point in time. And you get drinking, you're doing these things, and then you get sick and you have to reinvent yourself. And then as I go along, I'm, met my partner now and became a stepdad, and then recently become a dad. And that's kind of like this whole, another layer to the whole getting to know who I am as an identity. And it's like, I'm a dad, but I'm also still the guy from the band. I'm also still the business guy. And it's kind of, it's just adding more pieces. It's like if I take off the suit of lies and then I'm putting on a fucking sick vest and I'm adding my, if I want to wear a weird fucking bow tie, then so be it. That's what I'll do. And that's true to me, then that's what I want to fucking do. And that's what I want to try and lean into. And I think that's, out of everything, I think that's what is the hardest thing to do, is to lean into
being true to yourself. Yeah.
Without, the external, because the external is fucking so hard, man. That talks louder to you than, especially in the, like where we are now with, when you got socials and stuff out, that it's almost like a fucking this big blazing mirror, and then you get a spotlight and you beam it into the mirror and it's blaring back at you, and trying to, you know, carve your own path and be honest to yourself that's the hardest thing, and that's the challenge that lies within this crisis of, you know, finding who you are.
But it's very mental as well, because it's funny you mentioned the external fear. We all, I think, mentally think of things so much that we do build up a fear. But what I found, especially with doing my identity crisis show, was by being very open and honest to the audience about me and things I've gone through in my life and things that I do in my life, even though there was part of me that was shit scared to talk about the past or admit certain things. It was amazing, number one, how good I felt talking about it, but also people connected with me so much more than they ever have over the past 6 or 7 years. And it made me think to myself, why was I so afraid to open up like that? And it really was that whole thing of it, you know, you buy into the fear and you realize, you think it's not going to work, it's going to be detrimental and so forth, but it's actually just you lying to yourself. It's another suit of lies, because if people can see that you're being open and honest, and people connect over truth. Do you know what I mean? Because even if something's a lie, people will connect because, well, that's wrong and this is the truth. So people still connect in any way over the truth. And I think that once we get over that fear and just let ourselves be who we want to be, and we drop the fear of judgment and so forth, and we are our true selves, and that's a continuous journey. I don't think there's anybody, at least especially that I know, who is the person that they want to be all the time. You know, I think that there's always a sort of part of you that you still feel, I can't show that person that thing. I can't show my work as this part of me and so forth. We're always still sort of hiding behind a little bit of things. But the more we can be true to ourselves and not really care what people think, then that's obviously something that we should all aim to.
I think that's the biggest challenging, is especially when you're a performing person, or even like, you know, when you've got a business, you have to put it out there and then you have to be yourself. If you've got a creative outlet, it's, you know, it's so hard to, you get scared to let people see who you are, because you're scared that they might not think highly enough of you because you've created this persona.
And that's imposter syndrome right there, isn't it? That is imposter syndrome.
And I think that's what, you know, the biggest battle that I've had, and a lot of, you know, people find. I think that's where, you know, I'm still struggle with it. I shut down before I open up, and I try every day to just build this out, to open up and just be more honest. And that's probably part of why, you know, agreeing to come on with you, man, is go, fuck it, let's go out of my comfort zone. Let's try and be honest and just take off the suit and like just lay it bare and let people see who I am. If they like it, cool. If they don't, well, they can go get fucked. And that's kind of growing into that, not giving a fuck too much, of being happier in your own skin, being your own mate more, and not caring, fuck the consequences of anyone else, because at the end of the day, they don't have to live in your skin. And that's I think that's the challenge, and that's where, you know, trying to learn that skill and hone that skill is, fuck, man, that's one of the best journeys when you realize that, and then you can pull yourself up when you're not, and then trying to bring it out more. I think that's the
yeah,
the challenge.
I think the underlying thing is, no matter what you do, people will judge you anyway, so you may as well just do whatever you want, because if people care, then who cares? You know, all you have to care is what you care about yourself, really.
And you can't, when you realize you can't please everybody all the time, and not everyone's going to like what you do, they're not going to resonate with what you do all the time. And once you can accept that, and you know you're not going to be able to please everybody, it's easier to step into that zone of going, fuck it, I'm going to wear this fucking item of clothing that I, you know, think people, you know, like I've recently, just an example, real quick example, is like I bought these fucking check pants, or like sort of like dress pants, I guess, like, and I would be like, you know, that's not a heavy metal thing, but I'm like, I fucking like them. I want to be this, and I want to look nice as well when I dress for different things. And it's like years ago, there'll be certain things where there's no fucking way. I'll be like, that's not, if someone sees me, it's not fucking metal enough. It's not this enough. It's not that enough, you know, like, and now it's growing into this where actually I don't give a fuck. I need to just worry about making myself happy and being honest to myself, which will then, the people that matter are going to see that and they're going to care and they're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and you're finding your own style, which makes you more unique.
Yeah, and I think that's the, like, when people are listening to this and they're listening to your whole podcast, they're probably on the same journeys of going, how the fuck do I get to from point A to point B to who the fuck am I? And that's the hardest question to ask yourself is, who the fuck am I? And then leaning into that, what makes me happy? What do I, you know, asking the right questions. And I think the more you can do that, the happier you become and the more successful in whatever it is that you're doing you become.
Absolutely. Now listen, Dave, just about to wrap this up. Talk to me quickly. Give me the name of the band and where can people find you? On Spotify, iTunes, YouTube? Where can people find the band?
Yeah, so the band is Demon Head. Don't look at the Danish Demon Head who stole our name, the fucking motherfuckers. But
there's no resentment there at all, is there?
No. Funnily enough, they're actually a good band, but it was just fun. We're No Space, Demon Head, one word. And then also if you're in the space and you want to check out what I do, I create, like, we do merch and stuff as well. So I got into my own business creating merch with Squid Ink screen printing as well. So check both of those out and drop us a line if you want to catch up, chat, whatever, man. I'm always open to having a talk to anyone. So
sounds amazing. Well, listen, Dave, it's been so good to have you here on the Identity Crisis podcast, and thank you for being so open with your story as well. And I know that it's not always easy to be vulnerable, not just to one person, but to an audience that you're never actually going to see. So, look, thank you for sharing your journey with us, man. It's been very inspiring, and the thing that I've loved the most is seeing how there's some overlap in our journeys, even though you're in music and I'm in comedy, and I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. I've actually really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Dave. Thank you for listening to this episode, and remember, it's only an identity crisis if you choose to make it one. It's okay to not be okay, so speak up and talk to someone, or be the one that someone can turn to in their time of need. Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening, and if you're interested in being a guest on the show, send me an email at jnewtzcomedy@gmail.com. I'm JNewtz, and I'll see you next time.